An elderly couple was taking a break from their work one day while they were sitting in front of a miserable house. A well-dressed man descended from a magnificent carriage with 4 black horses as it abruptly accelerated. The peasant got up, approached the great man, and inquired about what he wanted and how he could help him. The stranger said, "I want nothing but to enjoy for once a country dish," and extended his hand to the elderly man. "If you cook me some potatoes in the same way you always do, I'll sit down at your table and enjoy them." "You are a count or a prince, or perhaps even a duke," the peasant said with a grin. "Such fantasies are common among noblemen, but you will get what you want." The spouse went into the kitchen and started to wash and rub the potatoes and make them into balls, as they are eaten by country folks. The peasant said to the stranger, "Come into my garden with me for a while, I have still something to do there," while she was busy with this task. He wanted to plant trees in some of the garden's holes that he had dug. The stranger inquired, "Have you no children? Who could assist you with your work?" The peasant replied, "No, I had a son, it is true, but it has been a long time since he left for the outside world. He wasn't a good person, sharp and aware, but unwilling to learn and full of deceit. He eventually fled from me, and I have not heard from him since." The elderly person took a youthful tree, put it in an opening, drove in a post close to it, and when he had scooped in some earth and had stomped on it immovably down, he tied the stem of the tree above, underneath, and in the center, quick to the post by a rope of straw. The stranger continued, "But tell me why you don't tie that crooked knotted tree, which is lying in the corner there, bent almost to the ground, to a post so that it can grow straight, as well as these." "Sir, you speak according to your knowledge, it is easy to see that you are not familiar with gardening," the elderly man said with a grin. "That tree there is old and distorted, nobody can make it straight at this point. Trees should be prepared while they are youthful." The stranger continued, "That's how it was with your son, if you had trained him when he was young, he wouldn't have run away, he must now have also become brittle and out of shape." "Really, it is quite a while since he disappeared," answered the elderly person, "he is probably different. If he came to you, would you be able to recognize him once more?" inquired the stranger. "Barely by his face," answered the old man, "however he has an imprint about him, a pigmentation on his shoulder, that seems to be a bean." The stranger bared his shoulder and showed the peasant the bean after he had said that. "Oh, my God!" the elderly man yelled, "Thou art really my son," and he felt a surge of affection for his child. However, he went on to say, "How can thou be my son when thou hast become a great lord and lives in luxury and wealth? How did you manage to accomplish that?" The son replied, "Father, the young tree was bound to no post and has grown crooked, now that it is too old, it will never be straight again. How did I acquire all that? I have become a thief, but I am a master thief, so don't be alarmed. Whatever I want is mine, and there are neither locks nor bolts for me. I do not steal like a common thief, rather, I only steal a portion of the excess wealth of the wealthy. I would rather give to the poor than take anything from them because they are safe. It is something very similar with anything which I can experience easily, shrewd, and aptitude I never contact it." Unfortunately, the father said to his son, "It still does not please me. A thief is still a thief, I tell thee it will end badly," he added. When he brought him to his mother, she wept with joy when she found out that he was her son. However, when he told her that he had become a master thief, 2 streams of tears fell down her face. "Even if he has become a thief, he is still my son, and my eyes have beheld him once more," she concluded. He and his parents sat down at the table, and he ate the horrible food he had been missing for so long once more. "If our lord, the count up there in the castle, learns who thou art and what trade thou follows, He will not take thee in his arms and cradle you in them as he did when he held thee at the font, but will cause thee to swing from a halter, the father stated. Take it easy, father, he won't hurt me because I know what I'm doing. I will personally visit him today. The master thief climbed into his carriage and drove to the castle as evening approached. He was received politely by the count because he thought he was a distinguished man. The count, on the other hand, turned pale and remained silent for some time as the unknown individual made his presence known. Finally, he declared, "Thou art my godson, and for that reason, mercy shall replace justice, and I will treat thee with leniency. I will test your skill because you pride yourself on being a master thief. However, if you fail, you will be required to marry the daughter of the rope maker, and the croaking of the raven will serve as your background music. Ruler Count, address the expert hoodlum, consider 3 things, as troublesome as you like, and in the event that I don't play out your errands, do with me what you will." After some reflection, the count said, "Well, then, first of all, thou shalt steal the horse I keep for my own riding, out of the stable. In the following, you will steal my wife's wedding ring and the sheet from beneath our bodies while we are sleeping without our knowledge. Thirdly and lastly, you will steal the parson and clerk out of the church. Keep track of what I'm saying because your life depends on it." The master thief moved on to the next town. He put on the old peasant woman's clothes he bought there. He then painted wrinkles on his face and stained it brown so that no one could have identified him. After that, he mixed a potent sedative with Old Hungary wine to fill a small cask. He put the container in a bin, which he took on his back, and strolled with slow and swaying moves toward the count's palace. When he got there, it was already dark. In the courtyard, he sat down on a stone, began to cough like an old woman with asthma, and rubbed his hands as if they were cold. Some soldiers were lying around a fire in front of the stable's door. One of them noticed the woman and said, "Come closer, old mother, and warm thyself beside us," to her. "After all, you don't have a place to sleep, so you'll have to find one somewhere." The elderly woman stumbled up to them, begged them to take the basket off her back, and then sat down by the fire with them. "What hast thou got in thy little barrel, old woman?" inquired one. "A good glass of wine," she responded. "I make my living by trading, and if you give me money and nice words, I'll give you a glass." The soldier said, "Let us have it here, then," and after trying one glass, he said, "When wine is good, I like another glass." He had another one poured for himself, and the other soldiers followed his lead. One of them yelled, "Hello, comrades," to the people in the stable. "Here is an old goody with wine that is as old as herself. Take a draught. It will fare much better than our fire at warming your stomachs." Her cask was carried into the stable by the elderly woman. The riding horse was saddled, one soldier was sitting on it, another was holding the bridle, and a third was holding on to the horse's tail. She spilled out however much they needed until the spring dried up. The one gave up the bridle quickly, fell to the ground, and started to snore. The other gave up the tail, fell to the ground, and snorted even louder. The person in the saddle did remain seated, but he slept and blew with his mouth like the bellows of a forge while bending his head almost to the horse's neck. The soldiers outside had already fallen asleep for a considerable amount of time and were lying motionless and dead on the ground. When the master thief realized that he had succeeded, he gave the first one a rope instead of a bridle and the second one a piece of straw for holding the tail. But what was he going to do with the one who was sitting on the back of the horse? He was afraid that he would wake up and scream if he'd been thrown to the ground. He had a good idea. He unbuckled the saddle's girths, tied 2 ropes to a wall ring that held the saddle in place, drew the sleeping rider into the air on them, twisted the rope around the posts, and fastened it. He quickly let go of the horse's chain, but if he had ridden over the yard's rocky pavement, they would have heard the castle's noise. So he carefully led the horse out, covered his hoofs with old rags, jumped on him, and galloped away. On the stolen horse, the master galloped to the castle at dawn. The count, who had just stood up, was looking out the window. He called out, "Good morning, Sir Count, here is the horse, which I have safely removed from the stable. Just take a look at how exquisitely your soldiers are sleeping there, and if you just enter the stable, you'll see how cozy your viewers have made it for themselves." The count laughed so hard that he said, "For once thou hast succeeded, but things won't go so well the second time, and I warn thee that if thou comest before me as a thief, I will handle thee as I would a thief," after which he warned the thief that he would be treated like a thief. The count said, "All the doors are locked and bolted, I will keep awake and wait for the thief, but if he gets in by the window, I will shoot him," as the countess went to bed that night with the wedding ring tightly clasped in her hand. However, the master thief went to the gallows in the dark, cut the poor sinner free from the halter, and then carried him to the castle on his back. After that, he carried the dead body on his shoulders and set up a ladder to the bedroom before beginning his ascent. At the point when he had got so high that the top of the dead man was displayed at the window, the count, who was watching in his bed, fired a pistol at him, and immediately the master let the poor sinner fall down and hid in one corner. The master was able to clearly see how the count got on the ladder, down, carried the dead body into the garden, and began digging a hole in which to lay it because the moon had sufficiently lit the night. The thief thought, now the favorable moment has come, stole swiftly from his corner, and immediately climbed the ladder into the countess's bedroom. The thief is dead, but, after all, he is my godson, and has been more of a scapegoat than a villain, he began in the count's voice, "Dear wife, I won't put him to open disgrace, in addition, I apologize to the parents. Give me the sheet, and I'll wrap the body in it and bury him like a dog burying things by scratching. I'll bury him myself in the garden before dawn so no one will know." He received the sheet from the countess. The thief went on, "I tell you what, I have a fit of magnanimity on me, give me the ring too." The unhappy man risked his life for it, so he can take it with him into his grave, and he continued, "I tell you what." She drew the ring from her finger and gave it to the count, despite her refusal to dispute the count. Before the count in the garden finished burying, the thief made off with these two things and made it safely home. When the master showed up the following morning with the sheet and ring, the count made a long face. "Are you a witch?" he asked. "Who has brought thee back to life from the grave in which I laid thee?" The thief said, "You did not bury me, but the poor sinner on the gallows." He told the count exactly what had happened, and the count was forced to admit that the thief was clever and crafty. He went on to say, "But thou hast not yet reached the end, thou hast still to perform the third task, and if thou doest not succeed in that, everything is of no use." The master smiled and didn't respond. When night had fallen, he went with a long sack on his back, a bundle under his arms, and a lantern in his hand to the village church. In the sack, he had a few crabs, and in the group short wax candles. He plunked down in the churchyard, took out a crab, and stuck a wax flame on his back. After that, he turned on the small light, laid the crab on the ground, and let it move around. He removed a second from the sack, and treated it similarly, etc. until the latter was out of the sack. After that, he applied a gray beard to his chin and put on a long, black garment that resembled a monk's cowl. He took the bag in which the crabs had been, entered the church, and ascended the pulpit when he was nearly unrecognizable. 12 had just struck the tower clock. He yelled, "Here, sinful men, the end of all things has come," with a loud and piercing voice after the final stroke. "The last day is within reach. Hearken! Hearken! Anyone who wishes to join me in heaven must sneak into the sack. I am Peter, the one who controls the entrance to heaven. Observe how the dead external there in the churchyard are meandering about gathering their bones. Come, come, and enter the sack slowly, the end of the world is near. The cry reverberated through the entire town. The parson and clerk who lived closest to the church heard it first, and when they saw the lights which were moving about the churchyard, they saw that something surprising was going on, and went into the church. After spending some time listening to the sermon, the clerk suggested to the parson, "It would not be amiss if we were to use the opportunity together and find an easy way of getting to heaven, before the dawning of the last day. To tell you the truth, that is what I myself have been thinking, so if you are inclined, we will set out on our way," the parson responded. "Indeed," addressed the clerk, "yet you, the parson, have the priority, I will follow." As a result, the parson was the first to leave and ascended the pulpit, where the master unpacked his bag. The clerk followed the parson as he crept in. The master immediately tightened the sack, grabbed it by the middle, and dragged it down the pulpit steps. He yelled, "We are going over the mountains," whenever the heads of the two fools touched the steps. He then drew them through the village in the same way, yelling, "Now we are going through wet clouds," as they passed through puddles. He cried, "Now we are on the steps of heaven, and will soon be in the outer court," as he finally dragged them up the castle steps. At the point when he had got to the top, he drove the sack into the pigeon house, and when the pigeons vacillated about, he said, "Behold how happy the heavenly angels are, and the way that they are fluttering their wings." After that, he shut the door behind them and left. He informed the count the following morning that he had carried the parson and clerk out of the church and completed the third task. "Where hast thou left them?" asked the master. "In the pigeon house, they are lying upstairs in a sack and pretending to be in heaven." The count went up by himself and came to the conclusion that the master had been lying. He declared, "Thou art an arch-thief, and hast won thy wager," after freeing the clerk and parson from their captivity. "Make sure you leave my land, because if you ever return to it, you can count on being elevated to the gallows. For once you escape with a whole skin." No one has ever heard of the arch-thief since he left his parents and returned to the outside world.